And that's just what we're trying to do with our podcast. So it's really not for everyone. If you want to talk about theology and doctrine, I geek out over that, but I know that's not my call with the podcast right now, which a lot of people are doing with their sermons. They do a podcast post with their sermon, which I think is great, but the world isn't asking about the meaning behind Galatians. They're going like, what is what's ethics and what's morals? How should I live my life? And then it could lead them into deeper doctrine and theology.
Welcome to the Carey Nieuwhof Leadership Podcast on YouTube. I'm so glad you joined us today. Hey, today we're going to talk about what it is like to lead a megachurch when you're a millennial, like mid-30s pastor. Mesa took over from his father. He grew the church from 1,100 after COVID to 7,500 plus today. How did he do it? We're going to talk about that. And one of the things he did is he used podcasting, actually viral podcasting, not the church podcast, but a totally different approach. You're going to hear all about that. Plus, we're going to talk about the challenges of succession and leading when you're ADHD. I am familiar with that. If you're new here, make sure you like and subscribe, maybe leave a comment, and we'll get right to my conversation with Adam after a word from our carefully chosen sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by the Art of Leadership Academy. Hey, if you're a church leader who wants to reach your community more effectively and preach better, and you want to lead stronger, I got something for you. Inside the Art of Leadership Academy, here's what you're going to get: expert guidance, proven strategies, and practical tools to equip yourself and your ministry, including access to all 10 of our leadership and preaching courses. And when you sign up today, you'll also get instant access to practical workshops to get a quick win under your belt in 30 minutes or less. Plus, you'll get live monthly coaching calls with me and access to a vibrant community of thousands of church leaders. Hey, and that's not it. We also are going to drop for you new tools and resources every single month. Think of it like having a personal leadership coach in your corner 24/7. It is the place that you need to fill the gaps in your leadership. So if you're ready to get serious about your growth and take your leadership to the next level, head on over to theartofleadershipacademy.com or simply click the link in the description of this episode. Believe it or not, it costs less than a cup of coffee per day. You'll get serious results in no time. So can't wait to see you inside the Academy. Click the link in the description and join today. Today's episode is brought to you by Belay. Well, is busyness really a badge of honor? Are the best leaders really the busiest, or are they simply the most intentional? It's a great question and one that we've got to answer. So when you're feeling exhausted and overextended, maybe it's time to get intentional and take a closer look around. Maybe it's time to harness the power of delegation. At Belay, they believe your time is valuable and you shouldn't have to do it all alone. So for over a decade, Belay has supported busy leaders just like you to find more focus, more time, and more growth by doing less. Well, you might be saying, well, how? Well, their virtual assistants handle the tasks that drain your time, so you don't have to. Their accounting professionals ensure your finances are done right the first time. And if you're not sure where to start, here's my suggestion. Download Belay's free guide today, 5 blind spots that sink your leadership. With this resource, you'll learn how to navigate the most complex situations you're facing in leadership, and it's absolutely free. So text the word Carey to 55123 for your free copy. That's Carey, C-A-R-E-Y, to 55123. It's time to get your free download so you can accomplish more by juggling less. Well, Adam, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. So honored.
So I've been really looking forward to this conversation on a whole bunch of levels. So you're one of so many sons who took over ministry for his father. And I'm sure it happens with daughters and, their parents as well. But a very significant ministry from your dad, Diego, who is an awesome dude. Shout out, Diego.
Yeah.
Back us up a little bit. And I would love to talk about how that conversation started, because one of the things we're seeing more and more now, 5-10 years ago, it was rare to have a millennial leading a megachurch. Now it's pretty normal. There's been a massive generational shift in the last few years. But back us up and tell us how that conversation started for you and your dad about you taking over what is now, is it Patria or Patria? How do you say it?
It's pronounced pretty much the same way, but it's like the difference between saying burrito and burrito. It's
yeah.
So we call it Patria, but
that's how I would say it. Yeah.
Patria is how you would pronounce it in the Greek originally, which is what yeah, exactly. But, it started in 2017, really around 2015. I have two older brothers. And so my dad really just started exposing the church to say, hey, I'm exposing my sons to leadership. I started full-time on staff in about 2012, 2013. And so relatively a couple years later, all my brothers ended up being in ministry together. That wasn't the original plan, but that's how things had turned out. And so my dad just started saying, hey, I'm bringing my sons up into leadership. And by time around 2017, I was 2 years into marriage. Me and my wife were leading our Sunday night services. And my dad basically said, hey, the board came to me and said, if something should happen to you, who would you want to lead? Should you pass away? Should you get into a coma or anything? And he really thought about it and prayed about it and thought my youngest son, Adam, is who I would want to fill in that gap. I was 27 at the time. And so the main premise was, hey, I'd like you to help lead if something happens to me. What do you think about that? And then really short, in a matter of a few months, he actually decided and said, actually, I would like an intentional transition with you for the next 10 years. So it was originally supposed to be 2027 because I was only 27 at the time. So the goal was 37 was going to be the transition. And then this little blip on the radar thing called COVID happened. And that kind of really changed everything for us.
What happened? Did your dad just kind of go, now is better than later? What happened with COVID?
Yeah, really for COVID, it was, like anyone else. So our church is majority minority. Going into COVID, we were about a 65% African-American church. And so we're kind of a historic Black church. My dad's a Mexican from East LA, but he got saved in the Black church. So when he planted his church in 1994, Abundant Living Family Church was our original name. He grew really rapidly in the African-American community because his style is that. My dad would wear the 3-piece suits, choir robes, whole thing, So coming back out of COVID, African-Americans were the last community to really start going back to church again. And the Black church as a whole has really taken a hit, even post-COVID. I have many friends that pastor largely African-American churches who are still having side effects rebuilding their churches. And so for my dad, frankly, he had turned 60 and he was just like, there was a few things, God's grace and anointing, as he would say, but also he didn't really want to rebuild a church at 60 years old. It's like you meet someone who, like a man gets pregnant at 60 or 55, their wife, and they're like, do I want to be a dad again? This is hard.
Do I want sleepless nights at 60? It was hard enough at 25, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that was his main premise was I don't have the energy to rebuild this thing. We were, over 10,000 member church going into COVID, and our relaunch weekend was, 1,100 people. So, post COVID. So it was a different world. And and every week it was honestly depressing, as you were trying to lead during that time. So he just really didn't have the energy or the desire. So it was actually in 2021 that he decided and said that he wanted to increase the time of the transition to about 18 months later. And so that's when we decided that 2024, January 2024 would be the date that I would begin to lead officially.
So you have two brothers, 3 sons involved in the ministry. That can sometimes create family tension. And to pick the youngest, not the eldest. If you don't want to talk about it, let me know. But how did that family dynamic play out? Because I've heard of cases where honestly it's gone sideways because of that, Adam.
Yeah. And I mean, probably too often, more than not, it does not go well. I think there's a few dynamics in our family that's unique. So I have one brother that's 2 years older than me. And I have another brother that's 5 years older than me. And my oldest brother is our executive pastor. And then my middle brother actually just about a year ago took time off from ministry due to really wanting a break from ministry and some other things. It really wasn't about our dynamic. It was some other things going on in his personal life. And so, one of the dynamics that worked for us is I'm the little brother, but both of my brothers call me their little big brother. So, they had their first kiss with their wife they're married to now. Their their first real kind of main real job was kind of at the church. Where me, my first job was at 16 working at a skate shop. By 18, I ran my own media company. By 22, I'm buying my first house, and my parents helped with that, all of us, but then I'm running a company to also pay my own bills. And so in a lot of ways, I was just kind of progressed in life a little quicker than them in those areas. And so I encourage them on business and finance and relationship and all, even though I'm way younger. So, later years down the line, when kind of the Lord made this kind of gifting, which was originally more entrepreneurial for me, they really saw that when you see church, you see the platform, you see preaching, you see teaching, but the big stressors are staffing and, and budget and finance and scale and growth and helping really manage reaching people in the way. And that was something that actually the Lord had given me a lot of gifting in. And so my brothers, before my dad ever have a conversation, said, Adam, we think Dad is going to ask you one day to lead the church. We just want to let you know that we're good with it. And I didn't want that. I had, when you looked at our church over 10 years ago, it looked nothing like me, so I got tattoos. I dress different. My dad's wearing 3-piece suits, choir robes, all that stuff like that. And so he and I actually had to make some conscious decision. He really wanted to change the culture and the demographic of the church, and he invited me to speak into that. And so as we began to do that, the church really started to change in terms of who you saw coming to church. And that shifted a lot.
I want to back up and talk about your entrepreneurial spirit. So you didn't go not a straight line into ministry. At 18, you're building your own company?
Yeah.
Talk about that. Where did you first notice, like looking back on your childhood now from your mid-30s, what were the first signs that maybe you're wired as an entrepreneur?
The first sign was when I was 12, me and my middle brother, Caleb, wanted to start a t-shirt brand. And so my mom, back then Dragon Ball Z was big. So my brother was a good artist. So he would draw these like angels that looked like Dragon Ball Z characters. And then I basically was like, well, I'll figure out how to get it out to people. So we went to a t-shirt store. Technology wasn't what it is today. And so they essentially told us, here's how much it would cost to do it, this and this and this. And my mom said, if you guys want to do it, you got to save and you got to do this and that. And so, but my parents encouraged it. Like, oh, you want to do t-shirts? I'll set up a meeting with you at a store and you could talk about what it takes to make it and all this. And then you decide if you really want this, you got to save for it. And we were 12 and 14 years old, so we didn't have the money for it. Then 16 years old, I was that kid around school that used to go to Costco, buy candy, put it in Ziploc baggies and sell, 5 pieces at a time.
You're a candy dealer.
Yeah, exactly. I had a teacher in high school, 16 years old. He had a refrigerator, and I rented his freezer out for $20 a month. He built a contract. We signed it. His name was Mr. Cataldo. He's still in our city too. So he hears this story every time I preach it and everything like that. And students go and talk to him. But I rented his freezer out for $20, and I stocked it with Otter Pops, those little frozen popsicles.
Yeah.
And I would sell 2 Otter Pops for 50 cents or 4 for $1. And I started making about $500 a month selling Otter Pops. And really at 16, that's kind of where that entrepreneurial bug, because I was like, wow, I could go buy Otter Pops 100 for $5 and I could sell and I could make $500 and keep $495. So that was something that really, and he tried to renegotiate the freezer lease, and I pulled out the fake contract that he made. And so that's really where it started.
So you're under contract, sir.
Yeah, we both signed a contract. And then 18, 19, 20, because I learned TV, video, and film from him, that was what my teacher was. That's kind of when the big Facebook boom happened. Instagram boom happened when I was 21. And the moment Facebook and Google started online advertising, I just seamlessly went into offer businesses. Hey, I can manage your online ads. I can help drive traffic. I already knew media and film and other things like that. And so I just grew. I actually, one day when I was 26, I had to make a big decision because that company had started making 3 times as much as I was making in ministry. And I had to make a decision when my dad asked me to take over the church. would I continue to run that company, or would I set it aside to pursue full-time ministry to the degree of what it would take to senior pastor a church? And me and my wife prayed, and we ultimately decided. I actually had a $1.2 million contract on the table with a company to run their ads. And I ended up passing on it, and ultimately kind of ended up shutting down the company at that time. Yeah. My lifestyle would have changed a lot, but again, it wasn't God's call for me, and I knew that very clearly.
Why do you think you end up renting a freezer and selling Otter Pops? Like, what is that inside you when you look back on it? Because not everybody has that, right?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think I have a determination to work. I think that's one thing I've learned from my dad. And my brothers have very incredible giftings, and we're very different at the same time. And one of the giftings I have, which I've gotten from my dad, is this drive of work. It's what drives me. It's what fuels me. It also could be my kryptonite. So I actually have to be very aware of that. That's what was wrong with my dad. And he admits it. When he grew our church, he sacrificed kind of family and family time at the bedrock of ministry. And so I have seen that growing up, and I've been trying to be as conscious as possible with that. My wife, who you've met Ashley before, she's not scared of speaking her mind. And so she helps keep me accountable in that. But it's this drive that I love. I'm not big into Enneagram, but I'm a 3. So that's what, I really want to accomplish things. I really want to work hard. And so selling Otter Pops, I get to solve people's problem, which at the time they had just passed the law in California that you couldn't sell anything that had a certain amount of sugar in it. That was in the 2000s. And so the high schools had to change all of the foods they offered. So they couldn't sell candy anymore. They couldn't sell soda anymore. And so here I come. I'm like, hey, supply and demand. This is perfect, And I had a 1.4 GPA in high school. So I was not the smartest in high school.
Exactly. But something's working for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Often one of the challenges entrepreneurs find is they don't fit easily into the church mold. What gifts, skill set, personality traits have translated well for you as now the lead pastor at Patria Church, and which are clunky or don't fit?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I'm clinically diagnosed with ADHD, and so I do have an interesting way of approaching things. Not only am I entrepreneurial, but I also can't sit still. I can't sit in one place. I'm always learning something new, and so paying attention is very difficult for me. Which is what's made high school very hard. I had a constant reassurance and thought. There was only 2 kids in my senior class that weren't going to graduate high school. It was me with a 1.8. I had a 1.4 most of the time in high school, got it to a 1.8. And then the guy who was the school drug dealer, he wasn't going to graduate high school. It's just us 2 of thousands of students in California, So that didn't feel good for me. And actually it was this last summer, I was now pastoring the church. I was playing golf with my dad, because I don't remember my parents ever worrying about why I didn't do good in school. I don't ever remember them sitting me down. I don't ever remember them, Adam, what's going on? All these things. And so I asked him, I asked my dad, why did you never care? Like, did you ever look at my grades? I had all Fs, all Ds. Like, I feel like for me, I'm a dad now. Like, I'd be concerned. I'd be involved. I'd be, meeting with teachers. What's going on? Like, why didn't you care? And my dad said he thought about it. We were in the middle of a hole, like I think the 9th hole at a local golf course. And he thought about it and he said, because I knew you weren't who your test said you were. And I knew God made you different, special, and unique. And school wasn't going to define what you did for your future. Oof. And that was healing for me.
What a dad.
And that just happened a year ago, But that was powerful.
Yeah.
So I think for that, I've always had, whether it was said or conscious or not, I always had 2 parents that embraced my uniqueness. They didn't try to fit me in a box. If I wanted to learn boxing one day, it's like, let's try to save up and get you a boxing bag. If the next week I wanted to, be a pro, road bike list, because we did road biking and stuff. My dad's like, all right, let's figure it out. Let's get you. And so they always encouraged my difference. And by the time I found, for me, it was media and design and all of that stuff that really I found a talent and a gifting for, is helping to tell story through branding and marketing, and really just my passion for Jesus. But that drove this heart for entrepreneurship in the way that I finally now I can articulate what makes me unique and what I love and I enjoy. In the past, it'd be like, well, it's a Tuesday. I'll tell you what I love today, but by Friday it may change.
Yeah.
Now it's been consistent.
There is a school of thought, because everything's treated now. Every diagnosis. I've never had an official diagnosis, ADHD, but my medical friends are like, yeah, you're textbook. And I was goofing around in high school, got like B's, but then when I hit university and got to choose, I was like dialed in, like hyper-focused. But even to this day, I have trouble in meetings I don't want to be in. I have trouble paying attention to anything I don't care about, et cetera, et cetera. And the argument, Adam, is that if you treat ADHD, now I'm sure I'm not a doctor, okay, so I'm not giving medical advice, but you can kill the entrepreneurial gene. Like, you look at the number of CEOs, entrepreneurs who have dyslexia or ADHD, it's a majority. And so I guess my question is, did you ever get it treated with medication? And if so, what were the impacts, positively or negatively? Or is yours like mine, never had a drug for it?
Yeah, no, I actually did. And to your point, and like you said, like, I'm not a medical doctor. This is my own personal experience. But in my early 20s, when I was in college, I ended up getting treated with Adderall. And I used it pretty regularly, which did help me excel in my test scores and paying attention and remembering things. But I did lose a piece of my creativeness. I lost a piece of my ability to adapt mentally in certain situations. And so ultimately, after about a year and a half of using Adderall pretty regularly, I had decided not to use it anymore, because I still ran. Even when I was in college, I was helping pay all my bills in college by running my own company. And so I even saw that what I was doing with that media company, I had lost a bit of my entrepreneur side, my ability to be creative, and it's different for everyone. And so for me, it wasn't, I didn't like it. It helped tremendously, but it didn't help what made me special and made me unique and made me gifted. So ever since then, I have not used any prescription medication for it. I've had to tailor not only my leadership, but my own life to be able to handle what it is. And my wife has, early on in our marriage, it would frustrate her, because it would be the time I'd leave a front door open, refrigerator open. It would just, mine is very severe. And so if my mind moves on to a new task, it forgets everything I just did previously. And that would frustrate her very early on. But now she embraces it, and we've learned to create, and our team is incredible at acknowledging what it is that I'm gifted in, and also being aware, like, you have 5 minutes with Adam to spark his interest. Now I'm gonna give you an hour, and I'm gonna be looking at you, but it doesn't mean, just because I'm looking at you doesn't mean that I'm paying attention. So the team kind of makes a joke. If there's a big public meeting, they say the moment Adam touches his phone, he's out. He's gone. Like, he's checked out. So they just look for it, like, and I hate to be that person. I try to be better in that area, but they just know if I have to draw my attention somewhere else and still listen, because I'm still listening, but I have to also be doing something else, they think he's disinterested. We got to line him back in. So my executive team is really great at helping me dial in, because our church is growing right now. We're, like I share with you, we're in a capital campaign. And so the Lord has moved tremendously in our church. But we also have to, because the team has been working with my strengths, but they've also been working with my weaknesses as well, filling in those gaps. So no one on my executive team has ADHD, thank God. Just me.
Yeah. And just to amplify what Adam said, we are not doctors. Please go check with your doctor. Do not take this as advice. And yet I'm of the same view that one of the things that makes me good at what I'm good at is the fact that my attention span is so short if I'm bored. But if I'm interesting, I got an hour. I got all day. Yeah. If I'm bored, please, let's move on. And my team had to adapt to that ADHD too. And they're like, if Carey's not passionate about this idea, it's going to fail. And that's a strength and a weakness, because if I'm in, I'm in. But if I'm out, I'm like, I'm not going to fake it. Like we've sent advertisers away because I don't believe in the product on this podcast. We've sent guests away because I don't believe in, I don't think that's going to be a good interview. So let's go a little bit deeper in that, because I talked with Mark Clark earlier this year about his Tourette's. And it's a bit of a fascination for me when you have Tourette's or ADHD or dyslexia. Like, how do you compensate for something like that? Because the percentages are so high, not of Tourette's, but of ADHD in leadership. What have been some of the coping strategies or the leadership strategies that you've had to engage in order to lead Patria well and your team well?
I mean, if this was 30 years ago, I think it would have been really difficult for how severe I have it. And who knows how much technology plays in worsening it or whatever it is. But as it is today, there's a few things that have worked really well for me. So our whole team is on Slack, and I'm in a massive amount of Slack channels that have hyper-focused conversations within the organization. And so whether it be, Easter's going to be coming up, or has happened, whenever this airs, but it's about, 45 days out for us. And there's a Slack with that where they're talking everything Easter. And so I get notifications on my phone, all the conversations. We're having baptisms this weekend. We're going to have about 500 people getting baptized. So I'm aware of all the dynamics across all of our campuses, what's happening. And Slack is helping because it's notification at a time. People have to, you keep it in less characters. In the past, and even with my dad in the past, we would have had a baptism meeting. We would have spent 2 hours talking about that Sunday and how many signups are there and how are we, right now I got 3 people talking in a Slack channel and I'm jumping in and going, yes, no, yes. Okay, great. I'll bring this up. I'll do this. And it's helping me framework because I can do it in bite-sized pieces. But at the same time, I'm having a baptism conversation right now before you and I film this. I'm also having an Easter conversation, and I'm also having a capital campaign conversation. And today's Monday, so I'm also going to get our numbers of, how many people we reached this weekend and how many salvations there were. I'm going to be able to do all of that within 10 minutes. And if something needs my hyper focus, then we will call a meeting and we will have that conversation. But if it doesn't need hyper focus, then we've got all the answers we've needed through that. And so technology today has allowed me and my assistant and other people on our team have a shared calendar with me in my iPhone. And so at any given time, my wife, today my son has soccer practice. It's in my calendar. So my wife has a shared calendar with me. My assistant has a shared calendar with me. My executive pastors have shared calendars with me. And so as everyone's making adjustments to my schedule and my calendar, I'm getting live notifications on my phone. And so I'm being aware right then. Whereas if I met with my assistant once a week and told me, what's my week look like? And I had this very, antiquated form of knowing what my week looks like, I'd be horrendous. I wouldn't be showing up to stuff on time. Hey, what time is the Carey Nieuwhof podcast again? And is the team, I just wouldn't have known. But I know because I wake up this morning, I open up my calendar, it's all updated. I can actually click the link. I already see the link to the podcast, everything, all the questions. And so my team has learned, if you give Adam stuff in bite-sized pieces, you could give it as frequent as you want, and he'll answer as frequent as you need, as long as you don't take a lot of time. And so for me, that's my enemy, is time. If you take a lot of it, I become very anxious and disinterested. And so we've shrunken meetings. We don't have certain meetings anymore. When my dad was doing things that we just felt like they were important for him, the way he led, but we could do it differently now. And that's what we do. And then I make sure Monday's my Sabbath. So I rest on Mondays unless there's something unique like this going on, but I rest on Mondays. So I make sure my mind at least gets 24 hours of rest as best as possible.
I mean, there are so many shifts that have happened in leadership, but you've only been, as we record this, the lead pastor for just over a year. And that sounds like a massive cultural, organizational shift in a period of months. How did you bring the team up to speed to your unique wiring that quickly? And did you get pushback?
Yeah, I mean, I think some people it was difficult to adapt to. One of the things, my dad and I have had a very successful transition on from all ways that you would measure it. The only thing that did kind of statistically happen the way that is said is we've had about 50% staff turnover rate. And so over the past, really since COVID, we have rebuilt the staff, even though my dad was the senior pastor, knowing that I would be the senior pastor. So 5 years ago, my dad stepped out from all the hiring processes. And our executive team acted as buffers between my dad being the senior pastor, and we would help translate what he needed, knowing that we were hiring for my leadership style. So even though I've been the senior pastor for about a year and a half, really the staff that's been built for the past 4 years has been one that I would say, okay, that's who I want to grow with, that's who I want to work with, and things like that. And so as we've hired, it's been with that knowing that strength.
What kind of pushback have you had to the culture shift on multiple levels?
I mean, a lot of people, it's they end up just transitioning and leaving. And the two dynamics between me and my dad that were very different is, and we say this all the time, is if you worked with Pastor Diego hired a doer, which was he really needed someone that would just execute his vision the way that he has written it out in kind of a blueprint. And what I do is I hire stewards, which are a little different. There is a vision, there is a mission, but the resources that you're given, there's a multiplication that needs to happen, and you need to be the expert at what you're doing. And so that has been a very different way of doing things, because what people would do in the past on staff is, Pastor Diego, just tell me what you want us to do, and we will go execute it. For me, I'm going, the end result is people discipled. How we get there and how every formulation that happens, I'm going to need you guys to have some say in that. And some people were like, I'm not used to that. I don't think like that. And I'm like, well, you won't survive here with where we're going if you cannot problem solve. If I have to be your problem solver, which for my dad, his gift mix is working strategically every day, getting intuitive. Give him the problem, he'll give you the fix. For me, I go, I don't have time for that. I can't fix all the problems. I need you to critically think how to fix problems. And dynamically, for some people, they were like, I don't want to do that anymore. And believe it or not, we didn't have to. We did release some due to vision differences and mission differences, but a lot of them were just transitioning on their own. But I would say this right now, and it's one of the things that now on our exit interviews we're saying is, about 50% of the people who have left in the last 4 years, 50% of them have asked to come back on board. And they said they made a rash decision. And they've seen where the church is at, and they've seen what, how the church is doing now. And it's almost like if people think that it's a Titanic, they want to jump off the boat. But if Titanic's still sailing in the water, then they go, oh, well, I want to get back on. I want to get back on. And so now whenever we exit interview people, we just say, hey, would you give 24 hours just to pray about this? We're with you. If you want to leave, we come alongside of you. And if we failed in any way, we apologize. But would you give it 24 hours to really pray about it? Because we're just seeing too many people regret it at this moment when they end up leaving. It's about half right now.
Some of the change is obviously from one style to another, father to son. And that would be true. I mean, a lot of this is so analogous to people who are just your generation taking over from older leaders too. But some of the shift, Adam, has got to be cultural, right? Like your dad is a young boomer. You're right in the heart of the millennial generation. What are some of the generational shifts you're seeing in leadership style, leadership approach, or the way you do ministry from, one generation to another?
Yeah. I mean, I think this works also for the church space and what we're seeing in general as well. But, it's moving to a very highly relational kind of community-oriented way of doing things. I think the heavy structure of a corporate kind of hierarchy and nuance and all that kind of stuff like that, Gen Z struggles with that. I'm not Gen Z, I'm millennial. And so we kind of, even Gen Xers teeter between the two, but really for Gen Z, and it's incredible. Like I've heard Dave Ramsey say this with Gen Z, you either absolutely love them or you absolutely hate them. It's one or the other, in the sense that they will absolutely come in your organization and thrive and just kick butt and just work really hard, or they're going to just, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? I don't want to do that. I don't want, so it's kind of, and we've seen that. It's like, we're seeing a new generation. They are either on fire or they find out very quickly, this isn't what I want to do, which is okay. And I know you and others have stared at statistics of how many jobs Gen Z is going to have compared to baby boomers. And so for my level of leadership and what we're seeing right now is we're seeing the change in culture would have had to happen whether I was the leader or a baby boomer was still the leader. Is because I see baby boomers who are seeing growing churches, but you talk to them, they're saying, I had to change everything. I had to shift. I had to shift our culture.
They did the reinvent. Yeah.
And so it's really not a me thing that had to happen. I just happen to be the person in the captain's chair and I'm young enough that it's still pretty intuitive for me because I'm near both of the generations. But there's this individual where we've had to change the culture to reinvent, to be able to reach the next generation, which is what we're seeing right now within our church. Is we're seeing a massive amount of young people not only joining the team, but coming to our church as well.
One more thing about attention span. How do you prep for Sunday when you have the propensity to get distracted?
Yeah. So one of the things we do now is on Tuesdays, I have a team of gifted communicators where we spend 2.5 hours together. There's 7 of us. And every person, we know what's going to be talked about. I have a preacher team, so we're multi-site. Some multi-sites are video. Some multi-sites get rotated with live preachers and things like that. So one weekend it may be video, one weekend it may be a live preacher, and then our broadcast campus is for the most part always live teaching. And so with that, we spend 2.5 hours. We study together, but there's enough people in the room that we will go on tangents and rabbit trails, and it works because we're all working on sermon illustrations, we're working on sermon stories, and we're working on the text. So every person in that room loves the Word of God like me. So I still to this day geek out over my Bible. I geek out over the Word of God. I geek out over the nuances of words. And I have people in the room that are smarter than me in certain areas that they're even telling me, hey, Adam, this is really what this word is. And then we're even arguing, like, old Jewish rabbis as well, on what the text actually means. So for me, that open forum of learning and digging in and building the sermon together, and then I ultimately, being the leader, have the final authority with what direction we go with. But that keeps my attention because as we build that for 2.5 hours, the rest of the week is now study time. So that happens on Tuesday for 2.5 hours. And then on Thursday evenings, I'll spend about another 2 hours on it. Friday mornings, I'll listen to some sermons I wanted to make sure my sermon was pretty much done before I'm influenced by anything else. But then I want to listen to some other sermons that really prep me. And then by Saturday, I'm studying again. I have to do it in bite-sized pieces. And I do it also in my phone throughout the week in my notes app. So I'm doing it all day. With an attention span, if we're thinking about something, which every Sunday is a big day for us, it's something that's always in the back of my head. And so when I think about it, I immediately start writing. So I may be at Disneyland, with a churro in one hand, and I'm like, oh, I'm with my family. My wife knows I'll never give a lot of time to something, just enough to get the thought out. And so she's really good about letting me get some space but I was also an entrepreneur before when we were married. So my wife's aware of the entrepreneurial life of there's no set hours of anything.
Right. You're not done at 4:30 exactly.
No. When she wanted to go on vacation and I said, babe, I need to get 2 to 3 more clients in order to do this. She's like, yeah, do it. I want to go on vacation. So she understands. And now going into ministry, she's in ministry with me as well. We just understand the sacrifice together of what it takes to be able to thrive at the capacity that we believe God has called us to.
So let's go back to 2021, 1,100 people, down from 10,000 pre-COVID?
10,000 members pre-COVID. We were right at about 6,900 weekend attendance. Yeah.
So fraction of what it used to be. And you've seen record attendance in the last few years. What was the rebuilding like? What did you have to do?
There was a lot of things we had to do. And so for context, we're about 7,500 weekly attendance now. And so over our pre-COVID numbers. And some of the things we had to do was, number one, I believe we had to start speaking to the language of the culture of what we were doing right now and what we see. So our church has a heart. Majority of people who are joining our church today are not church transfers. They are new believers. And so that's the heart of our church. Evangelism is the heart of our church. Being the hands and feet of Jesus is the heart of our church. And so we have a feeding center called the Generosity Center that has about $10 million worth of food contracts. And so we have about over 5,000 families every single week that's getting free food from our Generosity Center. So during COVID, we built that stronger. Me and our team, we went out and chased down companies to try to help us to feed people. And believe it or not, because of COVID, restaurants would be open one day, and in California, they'd be closed the next day. So they'd have all these refrigerators. So that helped us secure a lot of relationships that have stayed to this day, where we're getting a lot of food for the community who's in need. And so we're making sure that we want to reach people on a very practical level at the same time. We've developed counseling curriculums. And so like if you come through counseling for us, we have about 10 video series that we're going to walk you through certain counseling needs. And so we've seen that mental health crisis peak up. And so we're one of the only churches in our area that you can get time to sit with a pastor after you do the counseling curriculum. And so you get up to 2 to 3 sessions for free, regardless if you're a believer or not, with a pastoral biblical counselor. And so we're doing things like that. We started a podcast that specifically speaks to culture. And so me and my wife do one culture called Beyond I Do. And then we have another one called Beyond the Letter. Right now, 1 in every 5 first-time visitors refers to our podcast as a first thing they interacted with before they came to our church. And so whether it's our marriage one or our lifestyle one, where we're talking about, it's kind of like a Christian Joe Rogan. So we're talking about everything. The last episode we talked about was self-reliance versus reliance on God, but we used a very famous thing that, somebody posted as kind of a trampoline into the conversation. And so we're really trying to speak truth to culture as we see many young people having a lot of question marks about a lot of topics in the world today. Our podcast is answering those. And so we're not answering, having the conversation to them. Unless it's the word of God, then that's going to answer things. But otherwise, we're just giving our opinion on certain things. But we're talking about raising godly children, how to deal with your children in secular schools, things like that. That's bringing people to our church. And then we also, I think like many churches, we have kept it simple. We are trying our best to just preach the word of God. People want to learn the Bible. And so, in some ways, we've taken some of the glitz and glamour out of some things. We still have dynamic worship. We're a historical Black church. So our worship is, people are doing backflips and, jumping up and down and having fun. But when we go to preach the word of God, I am teaching you the Bible. That is my goal. I'm not preaching for your Sunday. I'm teaching for your Monday through Saturday so that you can walk out your faith. And so, and that's no different. My dad was doing his own version of that, but I think we're seeing the growth right now because we're actually trying to disciple people in community. Our small groups are bigger in our church's history. And most people say minority churches, especially Black churches, do not do small groups. We're right now at 95% of our weekend attendance is in small groups, statistically. And so I think all of that together is working to reach an unchurched, not people who left their church looking for a new church, which that's fine too. We have some of those, but it's people who are going, I was Catholic when I was 3 and I was baptized and that's about it, but I've never been in a church since. We're getting a lot of those right now.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gloo. Well, summer's almost here, which means millions of people are moving. In fact, over 19 million people will relocate between May and August, and more than half of them are actually looking for a new church. So here's the question. Will your church be ready to welcome them when they move to your community? With the new mover program in Gloo Plus, you can automatically send personalized postcards to new families in your area every single month. You don't have to do the printing, the postage, no hassle to you. It's the easiest way to make a great first impression and help people feel at home in their new neighborhood. This is one of the most popular features in Gloo Plus, and it's now included with your membership. If you haven't activated it yet, well, now's the time. So don't wait until summer's already gone. Visit gloo.com/plus. That's gloo.com/plus to activate the new mover program and start welcoming your new neighbors today. I want to talk about the podcast and community groups, but let's start with the podcast because you and I were at an event, beautiful palm trees, and I remember you were talking about this podcast. Most pastors are like, I got a podcast because we put my message out on Sunday. I'm sure you do that, but you're talking about something totally different. Talk about why did you start the podcast? How is it different? What are you doing? And why is it drawing approximately 20% of your new growth by podcast?
Yeah, I think so. We started our Beyond the Letter 2.5 years ago. And then we started Beyond I Do a little over a year ago. And for us, what we wanted to do was I found that as we were bringing new believers, not people who grew up in church, not people who have been in church for forever, people who had no touch to Christianity, to faith in Jesus at all. There were a lot of questions that just our church and churches were never talking about. We just assumed.
For example, like what?
Oh man! For example, things about what's happening in culture. What as schools start to open up, should I let my kids take sex ed as junior hires? And this is like not even Christians are asking that questions. Other people are asking those questions. People are asking questions like, how do I have a healthy family? What is good in the world? Everybody's debating about politics and what's right and what's wrong. And so what makes a person good? Things that we would in the Christian world go, this is we understand this, we've heard this for forever. But to an unbeliever or a new believer, they don't always know what that is. When I one time had a new believer came up to me and she said, why do you keep referring to these guys' names? What books is their names from? I said, what do you mean? She said, like when you say Matthew, like when you're teaching and a thing goes and it says Matthew, where is Matthew and where is his book at? And I said, his book's in the Bible. And she was like, no, the Bible's one book. And I was like, no, the Bible's 66 books. And she was like, what? 66 books? So her mind was blown. And a lot of times we just don't think. Now we've changed that in our sermons too. We do explain things as much as possible as well. But Beyond the Letter has helped us be able to have conversations to see what the normal Christian life looks like. What would 4 Christian friends over lunch be talking about? Well, we'd probably be talking about what's happening in society. We'd probably be talking about that big thing that went viral yesterday and how do we think about it or what do we feel about it? And so as we're having those type of conversations, we ended up doing a marriage spinoff one because a lot of people are having relationship stuff. I'll make this short, but there was a day right when we launched our marriage one, our stuff kept going viral, our marriage stuff. And there was a couple who was separated. They were living in 2 different apartments and they were going to get a divorce. And my wife started sharing statements about, what about biblical submission means and all these things like that. And he basically sends her the Instagram reel and says, if you thought more like this girl, I don't think we'd be getting a divorce. And turns out, while they had been separated, that girl actually started coming to our church and got saved. We just randomly showed up on his For You page that it was going viral. And so he sends her another one 2 days later. Then she sends him one and says, oh, look at this comment, what they're saying about marriage here. And then finally she says, just so you know, those are pastors. He didn't know we were pastors. I go to their church. I just got led to Jesus. Will you come to church with me? Today, their marriage has come back together. They're living in the same room again, same home. So for me, that's the win. We're meeting people exactly where they're at. We're using our faith as a daily life to be able to have conversations that an unbeliever can see and say, I think that's what I want. And then we say, well, our secret sauce is Jesus, our relationship with God. That's what's driving us. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do with our podcast. So you can listen to it, and we barely ever talk about our church's name. We don't even link our church's name to it. Our church understands it is a ministry of ours to reach people far from Jesus. But I want people to step into someone else's church and say, I became open to faith because of what these individuals said. I don't think there's a lot of front door to faith today. I think there's a lot of back-end discipleship, but I don't think there's a lot of evangelism. I don't think there's a lot of people opening up the doors for people to be able to see who Jesus is. And that's just what we're trying to do with our podcast. So it's really not for everyone. If you want to talk about theology and doctrine, I geek out over that, but I know that's not my call with the podcast right now, which a lot of people are doing with their sermons. They do a podcast post with their sermon, which I think is great, but the world isn't asking about the meaning behind Galatians. They're going like, what's ethics and what's morals? How should I live my life? And then it could lead them into deeper doctrine and theology.
I think that's a really innovative approach. Now, there are some people going, wait a minute, the church name isn't there. You're not leading with, and I'm a pastor and you ought to go to, you're not leading with any of that. So you're not speaking to the Christian subculture. You're speaking to people. So to ask the question probably everybody's asking, Adam, is, well, okay, how do they make the connection between you and Patria, the church? How do they do that? How does that happen?
Yeah, the main connection is I'm the host. So I tell you who my name is. I tell you, in the handle, it's my personal Instagram. And so then people start deep diving. And, when you try to push something at someone, they figure it out. People are hungry who want more, people who want to learn more. I had a friend from high school that I hadn't spoken to for 17 years who's married with children. And about 6 months ago, he DM'd me on Instagram and said, I started listening to your podcast. I like the way you talk about things. I'd like to start reading the Bible. What do you suggest I start reading? And his wife, who I knew in high school too, messaged me and said, he has never been open about faith in church in his entire life. He's never been to church before. And because of your podcast, he's thinking about opening the Bible. So I asked him for his address. I sent him a Bible. I sent him a devotional. And he's in Mark chapter 5 right now. And he's reading the Bible. He's yet to come to my church. But if I'm living the way what we do as believers isn't to fill butts in seats. That's not what I'm called to do. I'm called to radically share the gospel, the love of Jesus, and bring people to repentance and faith. And if it's my church or someone else's, praise God that they be grown in that. And so our church understands that that's a mission and vision of ours. And people who want to know who I am, they go and they find Adam Mesa and he's a pastor. I wonder where his church is. A woman thought because I was talking about Jesus through my podcast, she thought I was a pastor in Texas. And so she showed me, she had on her vision board to visit me in Texas, and come to find out, a friend invited her to our church. And her third week, she realized I'm the guy she'd been listening to for 6 months. She had no
crazy.
idea.
So she'd already been to your church and finally connected the dots.
And because on Sundays I wear a blazer and, I dress up a little bit more because I'm aware of my crowd and who I'm pastoring. And so but one Sunday I happened to wear a hoodie and a hat, and she connected the dots and was like, oh, because in the podcast I dress very down. And so, yeah.
So I got to ask, how is the podcast going viral? Is it audio? Is it YouTube? Is it social media? What are you doing to get the word out, and where does it seem to be connecting the most?
Yeah. So my team that's producing the podcast, most of them are under 22 years old. And so they have a natural eye for what we're doing. And again, I have a background in this. So I've produced podcasts for the King family and some people that, teams at Facebook and other stuff. So it's what I've done for other people for years. And so it just happens, virality with TikTok and other stuff is built different now. So there's a couple main things. Number one is we are talking about things that are controversial. One of the things we don't touch as a podcast is we don't touch politicians or heavy politics, because I think that is very divisive. But what we will talk about is the ideas behind some of these things. And so, like right now, one of the things that I consistently go viral for, that still is going viral every single day, is I made a comment one day that I had told all of my 4 friends, because I have 4 very close friends. I said, if you ever see me hit on another woman publicly, you can immediately go and tell my wife on me. You can call my wife and say, I saw Adam. He flirted with a waitress. You don't have to warn me. You don't have to check me. I know that's wrong. I know I shouldn't be doing that. Snitch on me to hopefully save my marriage. Well, that got clipped and people love it. People hate it. People are like, who is this guy? Where do people actually do this? And then other men are DMing me and say, hey, I actually need this accountability. I find myself. So we're sharing our beliefs as that a normal Christian would be like, yeah, you shouldn't be hitting on a waitress. But people who aren't believers, but I mean, even Christians are foolish too. But, it's just the practical way that we're having conversation is we're talking about things that the average person won't do. And I'm okay. One of the things COVID taught me is not everyone is going to like me. And so if I had this podcast pre-COVID, I would have thought, well, I want to have a church that everyone wants to come to. Well, the reality is you could be the most perfect person. You look at Joel Osteen, he smiles every Sunday. He talks about all the good things, and half of the people still won't listen. So I realized there is nothing that I could do or talk about where everybody's going to say, I love this guy. I agree with what he says. So when I realized, I said, actually, the things that I would talk about privately about the way I discipline my life and the way that my marriages ran and the way that I think about what's going on in the newspapers and stuff, if I share that publicly, there are going to be people that are going to start to, oh, wait, I think that way, or maybe I don't think that way. And I'll just say one of the things that does, I don't know your thoughts on this, Carey, but it does bother me that in America, pastors mostly talk about free speech and stuff, but they're always hiding their comments and limiting their comments for people to comment. And so it doesn't make any sense to me. If we believe in free speech,
the dots. That's a genius insight, Adam.
I'll see a pastor going viral, and then I'll open up the comments and say comments have been limited, or people going, "Why are you deleting my comment?" And I'm going, why are we taking advantage of free speech, but not also letting free speech happen? So in my comments, it sometimes is a bloodbath. I don't engage with it. I don't talk in it. I know what God's called me to do, which is have conversations on culture.
Go there because
Because let it stretch you, let it challenge you, let it grow you. I'm glad what I said is making you feel uncomfortable, because hopefully by the time you meet Jesus is going to ask you to do a lot of uncomfortable things. So if the sheer fact of me just saying, hey, be accountable to your wife in marriage is angrily to you, then just wait until you meet Jesus and the other things he starts speaking to you to do. So I embrace it. I always tell my team, don't delete comments. Don't block people. Now, there are rare times we maybe have had to do it out of bullying or whatever. But other than that, we say, hey, we're a free market. We're a town hall. That's what we want our church to serve as. And we want to encourage our congregation. Oh, you don't like what he said? Yeah, go talk to him about it. Because that's what I want. I want to be able to talk. Hey, let's talk about what I said made you feel uncomfortable.
What have been some other keys to seeing your church really, grow 6x in the last 5 years?
I think one of the biggest things is make baptism a big deal. It's one of two things Jesus left us with, communion and baptism. And so communion should be sacred. Communion should be reverent. Communion should be special. But baptize people. So for us, we make baptism a big deal. Everybody gets a shirt. We change the shirt every single year. We put a 40-foot pool in the center of the sanctuary. We worship God and celebrate. Last year, there was a movement called Baptize California. This year, it's called Baptize America. And the church called Oceans Church is leading it. Mark Francie, incredible pastor. But we participated in Baptize California. And I don't say this braggadociously or anything. There was about 350 churches involved in it. About 20,000 people got baptized on Pentecost Sunday last year. Our church had the single most baptisms of any church that participated. We had 1,100 people get baptized on one Sunday. Wow. And we weren't even expecting it. We had about 650 signed up. We had over 400 impromptu people get baptized with their clothes on. And so we always make a promise. We preach the gospel and we say, if you decide to come in your clothes, we have an entire set of shirt and shorts and socks in a box that we'll give you. Don't let the fact that you didn't come here prepared be the thing that stops you. And we had a little close to 400 people that day in suits, jeans, t-shirts, decide to get baptized on Pentecost Sunday. And so we do it every single quarter. Last year was our most in our church's history. 1,900 people were baptized. I'm believing God for even more this year, not because I care about the numbers, but I care about the souls. And I believe God has called us to a season to reach lost people. And there's more lost people, than ever. There's more believers, in history with billions, but there's also more lost people at the same time. And so I would just love for our church, Patria, to be rooted in preaching the gospel and allowing lost people a space to find Jesus and find salvation. And so baptism is just, to me, absolutely critical about it. We used to have it in a back tank. We would do 40 people a year, and it was kind of secondhand, kind of not for any reason, not, it's just sometimes in church, you take the religious stuff and oh, that's religious. Let's just put it behind the scenes. And man, I think if Jesus said it, make a big deal of it, because chances are he's going to breathe life into it if you do.
95% of your average weekend attendance in community groups. Two things. Yep. How and why? Why? Like, that's something you're celebrating. A lot of churches are questioning community groups right now. You're like, no, we're doubling down on that. So why'd you do it? And then how did you do it?
Yeah, I think there's a few ways that we did it. So we take the Highlands model, and so we do seasonal. And so we do 3 to 4 seasons a year, 8-week, 8-week, 12-week, 8-week. And so one of the things we had to do as a church is, number one, we were working against a culture. So minority culture, African-American Hispanics don't tend to live in apartments, don't have the nicer homes. And so to tell people, invite them into your home. In the Black community, if you get invited into someone's home, you're not a friend, you're family. It's a huge leap, whereas other cultures, it's like, oh, bring your friend Johnny over. We'll have some lemonade. Like in the Black culture, you get invited to someone's home, you're a cousin. You're now a play cousin. So there's a lot of cultural things you're working through. Hispanic families still a little bit more open, but still very chaotic families, lifestyles, busyness, all that stuff. So for us, what we did is about 6 years ago, we knew we had to kind of starve our church in some way. We used to be the Burger King model, which was you can have it your way. So we had singles ministry, young adult, and these were all weekly ministries, men's ministry, women's ministry. They all met every single week. And each one had, 60 people here, 20 people here, 10. And people had full-time jobs just running 60 people, 80 people, all that stuff. So when I started taking over, I just said, Dad, we've tried small groups, but we've never stopped doing everything else. We've always just treated it as one of the things to add on top of everything else. So I said, I think if we have to do it, we have to get rid of everything, like everything besides Wednesdays and Sundays. And he was like, all right, let's do it. So we cut young adult. So when people ask me, hey, when does young adult meets? I say Sunday at 9 a.m. and 11. That's when young adult meets every Sunday. We're not building a mini church for you. We have kids ministry, we have youth ministry, but after that, it's all adult ministry. Hey, where's our singles ministry? It's called serving. You start serving, you're going to start meeting singles, so it's not perfect, but we do every once in a while, we'll have mixers and we have quarterly young adult nights. And so whenever we have something special, so now we do 2 men's nights a year, 2 women's nights a year, 4 young adult nights a year. Every time we have those nights, 5 minutes of the entire itinerary is talking about small groups and saying, if you're not meeting in a small group, then this night does not matter, because this night is meant to fill you and show you the options for community. And so we just had a men's night last week. 10 minutes to the whole night was talking to 5 guys who started a small group with men that were all incarcerated. And so we talked about, hey, if you have a past, if you have, drug abuse, incarceration in the past, this is potentially a group for you. They tripled in size the next Saturday, So for me, it was, we got to start people. When we do have specialty nights, we need to point to community. And so for us, as we pointed to that, and then the last thing that we did was twice a year in between our small groups, we do what we call Discipleship Sprints. And we take one topic and we put round tables all in our sanctuary. So everybody has to sit with each other in circles. And we do a 5-week sprint on one particular subject. And so we've done a men's one where we just taught Luke 2:52, Jesus grew in wisdom, stature, favor with God, favor with man. We did a 5-week women's one. This last one, we did 5 weeks on how to read your Bible by yourself. So we just taught how to read the Bible. And we're having over 1,000 people show up to all of those every time we do one. And then that whole point of when you're at that is you're sitting in a table of 6 and we say, hey, with this table, you've sat with 5 weeks. Would you consider doing a small group with this group? And then a lot of times people go, yeah, I really got along with these people. I'll do it.
These are good people.
And so everything we're doing at the end, it's capped with, hey, would you continue to do life with these individuals?
How do you overcome the home issue? Like, are you doing it at the church, or are you still sending them to people's homes?
We're letting people rotate into the church campuses where people are holding it at Starbucks. People are, the third space has lost its value today, but people are slowly opening up their homes, but they're also meeting at parks and things like that. And so people are finding creative ways to work it out. And, coffee shops are so popular nowadays. So most people are doing them at coffee shops. That's where most of the time it happens. Yeah.
What is the biggest surprise to you since you became the lead pastor? You're like, I had no idea.
Well, I think anyone would say, I had no idea the weight was going to be what it was. And so I think just being next to my dad for so many years, I figured, I could do this. Like I could, I see it stressful. And then, the month that I took over, and then we had to step into a capital campaign because our church had seen so much growth across all of our campuses. I was like, I had no idea. There's just days that I'm just awake at night. I slept like a baby, before this. Now I'm just awake. Now I have to talk to my wife about, I was really good with handling stress before. Now I just like, hey babe, I need your help. Like I'm really anxious right now. I'm really stressed right now. And so the weight became, and I have great outlets, great relationship, have great pastors that I go to counseling. And so I'm in a cohort with Sean Morgan. And so that has been lifesavers. If I didn't have those things, I don't think I'd be standing the way that I am right now. I think a lot of this would have crumbled me, or I would just been progressing much slower than what we're seeing in our church. And so the weight of ministry has really shocked me to this degree. And then also the, relationships do change when you're leading at this capacity. And so,
particularly when you grew up in the church, all these people knew you and related to you as the younger brother, the son, the entrepreneur. All of a sudden, you're the senior leader. Talk about that dynamic. Like what shifted?
I think some of the biggest things is, people that I thought liked me, they wanted opportunity the moment I became in charge. And when I didn't, we weren't friends anymore. And so that made people putting me in really uncomfortable positions, really uncomfortable asks. The opposite, people that I've really respected in ministry of like, hey, I'd love for you to come like on an elder level, or I want you to come walk alongside me. No, Adam, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want, I'm not trying to climb no ladder. And I'm like, no, I need you. And so it's been people who go, hey, I don't want to take advantage of you. And then other people who are like, I would love to take advantage of you, and then on top of that, all of a sudden everyone's called to ministry when you take over. I think one of it could be any reason, but I think because of my age, some people thought maybe I'd be naive. And so people were requesting meetings. At one point when I took over last year, I had about over 100 requests for people to meet with me for different things. Whether it was for counseling or it was for me or for them to share with me their great call that God has placed on their life. And I think because of my age,
meetings,
I think because of my age, it was just like, oh, I could Adam's going to need help. And, as long as I sell myself well, I could probably flatter him, and I tell people all the time, if I was easily flatterable and I was easy to manipulate, my dad would have never transitioned. We didn't have to transition right now. We had a different runway. We had a different plan. But he did it because he felt like I was ready. He felt like the church was ready. And so I tell people all the time, like, if you think that it was because I still have some type of naivete. Now, there's a lot of stuff I don't know, but I'm also not bright-eyed, bushy-tailed thinking that everyone's in this for the right reasons or everyone's doing things for the right cause. I'm still very highly critical and highly, I'm more of that person that's more of a skeptic than anything. And so it's just been a whirlwind of people wanting to meet. And everyone has a different reason. And people that I go, oh man, I would love to run with this person. They tend to be the ones that are like, no, I don't, I'm good, Adam. I'm good. I just want to continue to serve or whatever that is. So it really has, and it's stuff that you could learn. And it's also stuff that it's just, you're seeing it as you go in,
Are you saying, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this, the people that want your time are not the people you want to spend time with as a rule, and the people you want to spend time with never ask you for your time? Is that the dynamic?
Yeah, that's probably the summary of it.
No, it's something I encountered too. I think I actually wrote about that at some point. It's like, why is it The people I want to spend time with never ask me for my time, and the people I probably shouldn't be spending my time with always want my time. It's a dilemma. How do you determine who you can trust when all those relationships have shifted and now you're in the senior seat? And I know these are early days, but how are you like, yeah, I can run with him. I can run with them. I can trust this person. This person's welcome in my personal inner circle or the leadership inner circle. Are there any criteria you're developing in real time for that?
Yeah, I am. And I've made mistakes. I'm very relational. I'm very relational.
Dude, I still make mistakes. Okay.
And so I really lean towards bearing my heart, being very open, it's a gifting of mine, but it's also something that can get me in trouble or also hurt me and my wife. And so one of the things in the past couple 5 months, one of my mentors is a pastor named Gerald Brooks. And he sat with me after a certain circumstance that highly relational. It just didn't work out the way that my wife and I had anticipated in terms of a staffing thing. And he said right away, he said, Adam, here's what I want to encourage you to do. No couple should ever just get one-on-one time with you and your wife. If you're going to hang out with a couple, there has to be at least 2 to 3 other couples so that no couple could say, well, we're Adam and Ashley's blank, so. Now, he said, there's people me and Ashley consider really close friends and family, but they're locked. I think our closest friends in our life had like over 7 years old at this point. So there's no close friends that we've gotten within 5 years. So those individuals, they're locked. I trust them. They keep me accountable. I have 3 layers to accountability in my life. And so they're one of them. I have 5 friends. These guys always have my location on at all times. And so they can pull up and see where I'm at any given time. Multiple people have my calendar so they can see what I'm doing at any given time. Layers. Yeah. Those are some of the layers. But then this layer, this layer of discipleship and relationship and church and ministry, me and my wife don't have meetings with just one couple. It's always more than one. On top of that, my wife and I won't do any private meetings with just her and I. So if you want a meeting with me and my wife, there has to be someone in the room as well with us. If you want, unless you write out specifically confidential counseling, which at that point, then I'm able to just, if you go into something different, I'm just able to get up and leave the room. But, into things like that. At the same time, I tell people I can't really do one-on-ones that much anymore if you're just in the church. I need someone else with me as well. Because there has been some times people have walked away and said, Adam said he's going to put me on track to be a minister. And I'm like, what? You told me you had a call. I told you, there's steps like this. And so what he walked alongside is he said, really value every word that you say. Your church has resources. Your church has influence. Your church has size. And so you're going to have to be able to pray through and navigate whether that person is really called or they are seeing it as an opportunity. And we've had to create layers of accountability, layers of how we meet. I think, because I'm stepping in as the new guy, but I also am younger. And so I think there is individuals who see that and may want to take advantage of that. And so I've had I have incredible wise counsel, including my dad and these other individuals on our board, that they've said, hey, Adam, we're going to help you by putting non-negotiables. And so those are some of the non-negotiables that have been, because now I say, well, this is my elders, this is my board. They, you can't get one-on-one coffee with me because my elders don't let me. And truly, they don't, because they see that a lot of people are they want to get on the podcast or they want to share about a book that they have or this. And at the end of the day, I'm still a pastor. And so I lean with pastor first. I'm loving, I want to be there for you. And they go, Adam, that's a weakness of yours. We got to you're just long-suffering with everyone. And I really am. So they've had to help me a lot with that.
You may have already answered this, and if so, we can move on quickly. But what did you do with the 100 and some odd requests to meet? Did they just all get filtered, or people are waiting until 2037 to meet with you?
Some were waiting, some were willing to wait. And so for some, it was a 90-day to 6-month window. Some people waited 6 months to have the meeting. Others, it was, okay, I'll just go to another pastor, or I'm upset, that's not right, or whatever. But there wasn't too many I'm upsets. There were a few, but most of them were. And then others were just like, oh, I'll just send him a DM. And I tend to read my DMs. And so if you can send it a DM and I'll answer it. What I don't want to give is 45 minutes to an hour, to this. And so my assistant has got, and I brought on a new assistant with me who was on staff, but we moved her into my role with me. So my wife and I happened to disciple her early on in her career, in her life and career. And so we have a great relationship. She gets me. So she's really good at helping navigate anyone who wants a meeting. But all in all, I think I ended up meeting with maybe 20 of those 100. And most of them were good. Others were, some people are well-intentioned. I want to help you, go further at them, but they just don't realize, what they mean by when they say that,
What are some misconceptions you had about the lead pastor role or church leadership that you're rethinking?
Oh man, I think, one of the biggest things, maybe it's different for everyone, but we were very hierarchical. It was very CEO kind of driven, if I use corporate language, right? If you use religious language, you could say Pope, right? It was very like, my dad was kind of the end all be all. The room looked at him when he was in the room, and it kind of much more of a triangle. What I'm trying to do, where I believe God's taking our church, is because we have a strong heart, not only multi-campus, but I want to go into minority cities and middle to low income cities. I don't think there's enough church planting happening in middle to low income cities. And so that's my heart. And so I think in order to do that, I'm going to have to share influence. I'm going to have to share leadership as best as possible. It's just not manageable for one person or even 2 to 3 people. And so one of the things that we're trying to shift is, how do we build a strong team, not one strong leader who drives the team. It's not a chariot where I have the whip and everybody else has the horses. That's not what we're building. What we're building is a place where we are highly collaborative. We are highly willing to not be the smartest person in the room, and we're passionate about where we're trying to go. And so for me, what I did with our executive team, I immediately elevated their voice, immediately elevated their authority, immediately elevated what they're able to approve and not approve. And because I also think that wore my dad out over all these years. And so I really highly, and he was that guy. He was just like, I'm exhausted, but that's also all he knew. So, our team, we're passionate. My oldest brother, me and Nathan, we get into it in not in a brotherly way, but in like a work way. We dialogue, we debate. Our executive team, we go hard with each other. But what I'm trying to do, even though I am the youngest guy in the room, I'm trying to lead them in a way that says, hey, you guys got this. We got this. You don't have to ask me about everything. If you make a mistake, I'm going to address it and we're going to learn from it. But I'm not looking for every opportunity to cut you loose. I'm not. And if I draw fear into my executive team, then what are they going to do? They're going to draw that into everyone else. Like, I'm so scared of Adam. I don't want to be cut by Adam. So I'm really trying to, and my dad never drew that fear, but I think just by nature, when you create that level of hierarchy, that is the driving force. I'm a yes man because I don't want to get replaced. I'm not going to replace you just because you say to disagree with me, or because you didn't do it the way I want you to do it. Now, if you're wrong, I'm going to bring it up for sure. And the next time you make a decision in that area, I'm going to say, hey, remember last time? But that's all learning. I do that with my sons every day. So that's kind of the shift I'm trying to make right now.
Yeah, for those of you who are interested in more in the transition, I didn't want to repeat the wheel, like recreate it here. Sean Morgan, you already mentioned him, Leaders in Living Room, great conversation between you and your father, Diego, about the succession and how it worked. So we'll link to that in the show notes. If you just search Leaders in Living Rooms, you'll find it there. And it was so good. Adam, we covered a lot of ground. I got to tell you, you're a leader I really enjoy, next gen leader. I've got you on my radar. I'm just so grateful for this conversation. Anything that we did not talk about that we should talk about before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so. Other than this is a massive honor, Carey, and you're a hero of mine and my dad's. I do believe we're thriving today because your voice was probably one of the top 3 loudest voices in our past 7 years. And so we couldn't have done it without you. Seriously, what you're doing. Every week I'd roll up to my dad's car and he'd be listening to you. And he'd say, I think we need to do this because I heard Carey interview someone and mention it. And so thank you so much.
Thank you. Hey, you and your dad came to our Art of Leadership Live event last September in Dallas, and we had dinner together. And I can see why this transition worked, and what an honor to follow your dad. And shout out Diego. I think one of the handful of listeners who's listened to every single episode along the way. And yeah, you got a great son.
And he has
Adam
notes
as well. Yeah. He has notes. He probably has more notes than I do.
Yeah, exactly.
This is great. Well, Adam, there's a great future ahead. Thank you so much. So give people just an easy place to find you, and then tell us about the different podcasts in your church and where they can find you online.
Yeah, the church is Patria Church. We're located, our broadcast is Rancho Cucamonga, California. So patria.faith, Patria.faith. My website is adammesa.org. You can keep up to date with what we have going on, and you could find the podcast on adammesa.org, or simply we're on YouTube, Spotify, everything else. The main podcast is Beyond the Letter, and that comes from 2 Corinthians. Paul says to the church, you are the letter written on my heart. And on top of that, the marriage one that me and my wife do, where we talk about all relationships, is Beyond I Do. And so, yeah, that's where you could find me.
Till next time, Adam, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Carey. Appreciate it.